Hello there, I'm Patrick. Welcome to Recon Paint Gaming. Today we're going to be discussing ionization, everything about it, what happens to you, what happens to your opponents, what happens when it's, discarded or different triggers, events, and everything in between, because guess what? It is different now with X-Wing 2.5 or AMG's X-Wing, so we're going to get right into that right away and cover everything for you. So, before we get started, I really want to go over the actual rules step by step, and then I'm going to go over a bunch of examples on, triggers and certain events that could happen, and it might leave you confused on whether or not you are ionized, or are you supposed to do your maneuver normally, or when are you supposed to set a dial. So, basically, when you are ionized, that means you have one or more ion tokens next to you. For small ships, it's one ion token. For medium, it's two. And for large, it's three. So if you have those number of tokens equal to the size of your ship, that means you're ionized. If you have more than one, two, or three, then you're still ionized. It just means that you have extra. During the execute maneuver step, the ionized ship executes an ion maneuver, which is the same direction shown as your dial. So you still have to set your dial, even though you might be ionized, you could be ionized, or you become ionized. So don't forget to set a dial, even though you know, I'm going to be ionized anyways, because if you don't set a dial, there are consequences to that. So basically, you set your maneuver dial to what you actually want to set it to. So let's say you just want to do a 3 straight, whether or not you're ionized or not. You set a 3 straight on your dial and you set it face down, just like you normally would, even if you weren't ionized. If the ionized ship dial shows a 0 stop, remember that's just still the normal 1 straight. So even if you set a 0, that still dictates that you're going straight. The bearing, the difficulty, and the speed of this maneuver cannot be changed unless an ability explicitly affects the ion maneuver. During the perform action step, the ship can perform only focus actions. So make sure that you remember that when you're ionized, you can only be coordinated focus actions and you can only take focus actions. You can't, try to juggle it around there. Ships, at the end of the ship's activation, if it executed an ion maneuver, it removes all the ion tokens. So even if you have 40 ion tokens for whatever reason, if you've executed that ion maneuver, you then remove all 40. It doesn't stack or, carry over into the next round. However, if you didn't execute an ion maneuver, let's say you're a large base ship and you only have one ion token with you, that stays on your ship until you execute that ion maneuver. So keep that in mind, because that has happened at events to where they hit me with a bomb. I got an ionized token next to my large ship, but then they didn't have any more ionization bombs, but I had to carry it with me the whole turn and game. It was really hilarious because I was never going to be ionized yet. I still had to take the token. Additionally, an ionized ship cannot perform any actions other than focus. I already stated that. It says additionally, ships cannot use abilities that trigger from an ionized ship revealing its dial. So keep that in mind. After something says, once you reveal your dial, you may do X. I'm sorry, you're technically not revealing a dial because you're doing an ion maneuver instead. And if a ship that was ionized during the planning phase is no longer ionized at the beginning of its activation, it can activate as normal, which again is why it's so important to set your dial as a maneuver that you would rather do instead. Because we're going to go over how that might happen to where you're like, I'm doing a 1 forward, but I would really like to do a 3 forward if I could. And then an ability triggers that removes that ion token, and bing, bang, boom, all of a sudden you're not ionized anymore, and you're launching 3 forward. So let's go over some scenarios and situations. We've set up the board. Let's get into it. Okay, so if you've ever been in this situation, it is the worst. Emon, with its bombing ability, is able to launch it 3 out the back and hit you with a Connor net. So, if you've never been in this situation, what normally happens is you become ionized. And depending on when you become ionized is going to change the outcome or the events. So let's just say for this example, nobody's moved yet. This is the systems phase. Dials have been set, and Emon launches the Connernet at you. And now, the effects that happen is, let's say that you have this Z95 locked. It now breaks all locks that you have on any ship. Now, if Emon or the Z95 have you locked and you become ionized, then the lock stays. So keep that in mind when you're preparing to drop a bomb or about to be dropped on, and you're like, oh, I don't really want to take a target lock the previous turn because I'm probably going to get a bomb on me by Emon. So keep that in mind. When you become ionized, you lose all the locks that you have assigned to ships. And if you have two, you lose all those as well. But if somebody has you locked, and even if it's the Z95, those locks stay on you even though you're ionized. So you do not break all locks. You only break locks that you have assigned to other ships. The other situation that happens is when you have your dial, you have to have it set before the bomb is even dropped. So you also have to anticipate what's going to happen as bombs are dropped, whether it's an ion bomb that detonates after you've moved, or in this case, you have the counternet land on top of you. So in this case, whatever we have dialed in here, in this case, let's just say it's the 3-bank. We're anticipating the movement and all that. It's the 3-bank that's set down. After all these ships have moved, like let's say Emon does a 1-bank or a 1 straight, the Z95 comes in with a 2-bank here. Since you were ionized with the counternet this round before your dial's flipped and during the systems phase, when you reveal your dial, you don't do the 3-bank that you've assigned. You actually do a 1-bank rather to the right. And that goes for if you set a 3 straight, you then do the 1 straight. And if for some reason you did the 3-bank to the left because you didn't think, or you might not bump that asteroid, you then do a 1-bank to the left. Same thing with the hard turn. If for some reason you keyed in the 3 hard turn, you still do the 1-bank to the right. So if you become ionized before your dial is flipped, make sure that you pay attention because whatever maneuver that you've set is going to indicate which straight or bank 1 that you're going to do for that turn. Okay, so now here is the second instance when it comes to being ionized. So in this case, Emon only did the 1 straight drop, so it's on the table. It didn't overlap the ship here. And let's say again, Emon does the 1 straight, the Z95 does the 2-bank in. You reveal your dial, you're not yet ionized, but you pretty much know as soon as you do this 3-bank, you are overlapping that bomb. I'm sorry I nudged it, but I overlapped it. I'm going to be sitting on top of it. Emon's already moved as well out of my way, but I then overlap the bomb or the mine. The mine comes off. I now become ionized. In these situations, you now only have the option to perform the focus action. If this was a certain scenario, I can't try to pick this up if it's a crate, or I can't try to flip this objective to my side if in fact I have the action available. I only can perform a focus action. I can't perform a lock because I just became ionized, and I can't be coordinated actions either because I'm still ionized during this moment. So I can't perform the target lock, and even if for some reason someone were to pass me one, it would not work because I can't perform any other action while focused because I'm still ionized. The tokens are next to me. That's very important because now we're going to go over the next instance. What happens if you're ionized from the previous turn, and we're going to go from there. Okay, so now we're on to the next turn. We ran over the counternet here. It ionizes us. We now have to set our dial still, even though it doesn't really have many options, and your dial is going to be here, and it's the same instance. Whatever you set, if it's a straight, regardless of a 2 or a 3 or even a 4, you're going to do a 1 straight. And the same thing, if you're going to bank right or turn right, you're still going to do the 1 bank right, no matter what you set. And the same thing with your left turns and banks. Even if you set it to a 1 bank, you're going to do the 1 bank. So that's the only instance where that actually does work. So in this instance, let's say Emon's out of bombs. Emon moves along. The Z95's already moved. And you chose the 1 straight. So you're going to execute your 1 straight. And you only can perform, even though you don't have ion tokens next to you, a focus action. Because in the rules it says after you execute your straight maneuver or ionized maneuver, you can only perform focus actions. So again, you can't try to flip these. You can't take any more locks or barrel rolls or boosts. However, now because there are no ion tokens next to you, you can be coordinated or given another action because you are technically no longer ionized. It's just in the instance where you flip your dial, execute your maneuver, remove the ions and take your focus because that's the only action you're allowed after you execute an ion maneuver. You then can take any action if it's been coordinated to you, or if somebody assigns a target lock to you, or allows you to take a target lock action, and so on. You still can't do any of the scenario maneuvers or scenario actions because you can't be coordinated those anyways, and you're outside of your activation phase. Okay, now we're going to get into the even crazier situations because, again, I just want to go over the timing of these ionizations and situations. So let's say this is Cad Bane here. He was ionized previous turn. He used either an ability or he went over another bomb from another ship that got destroyed. And now we have the defender that activates before Cad Bane. Let's say he's I4, so is Cad Bane, and the defender has the initiative. And we reveal our dial. We're not ionized. We do our 3 straight and end up here. However, Cad Bane has Snapshot, which allows us to roll an attack die at range 2 if the enemy executes the ship in its arc, which of course we check. It's range 2, you shoot. Now, the defender hasn't gotten to its action step yet because it just executed its maneuver. Let's say for whatever reason Cad Bane got lucky, rolled 2 hits, the defender blanked out, and Cad Bane's ability then triggers, which says after you perform an attack that hits, you may spend 2 charges to transfer one of your non-lock red or orange tokens to the defender. So now you pass your ion token over to the defender, and you're like, wow, that's crazy. I mean, what happens now? Well, guess what? You're ionized, and you go to your perform action step, which means you now can only perform a focus action. You can't do a lock. If you have a lock, let's say, on Emon from the previous turn, that now comes off. If Emon has the lock from the previous turn, that stays on, and you then proceed to the, Emon then moves, you go to the next turn, and now you have to set your dial because you still have to set a dial, and you're now ionized, so you're going to have to remember that you're going to either do the 1 bank left, right, or straight. And the only reason I go over confusing moments like this is because you're going to run into situations like this to where a ship can remove its ion token before it flips its dial, which means it's executing its maneuver normally, and it gets to take actions normally, so it doesn't have to take the focus. It could do a flipping of the action or the scenario token there, and it can do the boost, the barrel roll. It can do whatever you want because after it executed its maneuver, that token was already gone because something took it away. And the same thing here, if Cad Bane didn't move yet and had this ion token, and this executes its maneuver, snapshot goes off, it passes the ion here. Now, whatever Cad Bane has as his dial for its maneuver, he has to execute and perform his actions normally. So you really have to pay attention to the timing window with these ion tokens and ionization because it really does matter when it happens. The final thing that I want to add is that you also can still be assigned or passed tokens. You can't be passed a target lock or assigned a target lock from another ship. But let's say Kyle Katarn has a bunch of focus and you're still ionized. He can still pass you a focus because you're not taking a focus action. It's being assigned to you. And then if he has Jyn Urso can change it to an evade for you to give you some extra defense. So pay attention to the triggers such as granting actions or assigning tokens and locks, as well as being ionized, and triggers that allow you to remove red and orange tokens that are not a stress token, or so on and so forth, because it is going to matter. It's going to change how the game triggers, and it's also going to make abilities sometimes happen. And the reason they did this is because of certain pilots that can get rid of ion tokens before they move and after they move, and so on and so forth. So it's very confusing, but it also makes the game very entertaining and fun because people are going to forget these triggers, and people are also going to remember these triggers. and people are going to ask a lot of questions. And a lot of people are also still remembering the old rules that were from first edition and second edition. So it is basically while you have an ion token next to you, all you can do is take focus actions. That's the biggest thing to remember. Second thing is your dial. Always set a dial, no matter what. Even if you know that there's nothing that's going to help you in this next turn, it's going to get annihilated because it's only got one hull remaining and now it's ionized. Still, set your dial because something could trigger that makes it not ionized any longer, and also set it to something that you're gonna want to execute. Because if by some chance you remember something and you're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot," I can take that ion away and I can 5 straight out of here, and I won't get killed this turn, and I can even possibly capture an objective or pick something up just for that one extra turn. And last but not least, it's locks. You can't be assigned a lock. You can't take lock actions. If you do, it's just going to evaporate into nothingness. But you have to remember, you can't take lock actions while you're ionized anyways, so don't try. And also, if someone has you locked and you become ionized, those stay on. It does not get rid of those lock tokens because, it's affecting your electronics, not theirs. So that's going to do it. You know what? If anyone has any crazy situations that they ran into, please leave a comment below because I know I've run into some crazy situations, almost like the Cad Bane situation, to where Cad Bane was ionized, shot at me, ionized me, and then I was stuck that turn with an ion maneuver. There's also A-wings that can, get rid of ion tokens before they execute maneuvers if they have locks, but you can't anymore because of the rules. So make sure that, like, if you have that story, someone might correct you and say, "Hey, that couldn't have happened. You actually should have been. That person should have executed an ion maneuver." And people are just going to learn and get better with the triggers and the rules. So that way, the next time you do play, and that instance comes up, you're going to know exactly what to do and how to handle that situation. So that's going to be it for today. Please click the like and subscribe button to let us know how we're doing. Make sure that we're, putting out content that you guys like. And go ahead and visit our store, www.reconpaintgaming.com. That's going to give you everything to our tokens, to our merch, such as our hats that I just added, and t-shirts, and mugs and stuff like that. You can also check out our other tabs and links. We have our podcast. We have our other World of Tanks leagues that we're running, and so on and so forth. So we just want to keep putting out more content for you, and we love doing this. And I'm going to go play a game of World of Tanks with Robert now. So have a good one and play casual.